We open on a maximum security prison in Russia. The announcer's voice greets spectators as the fight is about to begin. Meanwhile, Yuri Buka mops at a disgusting prison restroom below the ring, hearing the chanting coming from the arena. He remembers a time when he was the one they chanted for. Prisoners above him fight in bloody hand-to-hand combat, not looking to be gentle. But then again, that's not what this fight's about. After all, this is Russia we're talking about. The reigning champion Vladimir Sakov wins yet again, and the mob boss and mastermind behind the prison fights, Gaga, is thrilled that his investment is paying off. On his way out, Gaga passes Yuri, who's mopping the halls. After his henchman drops off some of Gaga's money, he waves it off, saying the janitor can just take it. But Yuri tells him that he's not interested in his money. He hobbles away and Gaga asks if that was really the legendary Yuri Buka. The warden nods his head as they watch him leave. The following day, Yuri gets the news that his parole has been formally denied. Even worse, if you can believe it, he's told that he won't be allowed to come before the parole board for another 15 years. So, back in his cell, defeated and seething, he practices lifting the bucket of water with his bad leg. He carries around the memory of the day he gained this tragic injury. A day that took him out of the fight and relegated him to being nothing more than a prison janitor. He's interrupted when Gaga visits him and offers his old champion a new, better cell and a job in the prison's library. For some reason, Yuri says no, believing this is where he belongs, so this is where he'll stay. However, as Gaga begins to leave, he's stopped and told that if he wants to help Yuri, he'll get him into the next fight. Baffled, he doesn't understand how on earth Yuri could fight, considering his condition. After being met with silence, he realizes that Yuri craves death more than winning. That's pretty grim, even for a Russian prison. Gaga rejects the request, not willing to put a man in the ring purely to die. A principled mob boss. You love to see it.
Before we get on with it, like the video, smash that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to join our expendable squad.
Yuri continues working on his bad knee, trying to get stronger. And finally he stops, grabs a shaving blade from under his bed and starts hacking away at his hair. If this were a teen movie, it'd be the part where the quarterback dumped him or something, some kind of big montage moment set to Hall & Oates. Meanwhile, Gaga's on the verge of a significant project that he believes will be one of his most lucrative endeavors yet. The next day at the fight, the announcer tells the crowd that the competition is evolving. He tells them all of a new contest. In the first ever prison spets competition, the best fighter walks away with his freedom. Now that's a prize, folks. Vladimir takes on the first fighter with ease, winning in minutes. However, his victory is short-lived when a new and improved Yuri throws water on the reigning champion and calls him out, claiming himself as the real champion. Vladimir spits at him before guards pull him away from the ring. Gaga tells the warden to let Yuri fight, and he grants the request, allowing Yuri to take to the ring in what they all believe will result in death. Yuri gets in the ring and damn! My guy is ripped as hell. I'd be weeping if I saw my opponent looking like that. The fight begins, and Yuri dodges all of Vladimir's attempts. Then, to everyone's surprise, he starts hitting Vladimir, and he's just unable to recover. Eventually, in a shocking turn of events, Yuri wins. The warden and Gaga watch on, speechless. Yuri's transferred to a new prison in Gorgon, Georgia, to embrace his new life as the Russian representative of the PSC. He walks into the jail and meets 8 international prisoners who are also competing for their freedom. While Yuri gets acquainted with the competition, Gaga schmoozes the high rollers who've come to witness this historic competition. He admits that Yuri's a long shot, but even he doesn't know how far he's going to go. The warden of the Gorgon prison forces them all to introduce themselves, state their crimes, and where they're from. One by one they present themselves, all murderers. This gang of killers come from all around the world. North Korea, Illinois, Colombia, Brazil, Russia. Turbo is the only one not to claim his crime. Instead, he tells them all that he was accused of murdering somebody, but not necessarily guilty. After the final prisoner, Dolar, introduces himself, the warden tells them that they won't be receiving special treatment and that they're in Gorgon, which basically means they're in hell. Turbo chimes in and antagonizes the warden. After a back and forth, the warden threatens him, telling him to watch his mouth or he'll find himself in an unfortunate situation. Turbo doesn't relent, forcing the warden's hand. He motions to the guard, who hits Turbo in the back of the legs. At the hotel, Gaga and Gio Farnati are chatting before the room goes quiet and heads turn. Georgian mafia boss Rizzo has arrived. He welcomes his friends before they all sit down to eat together. They celebrate the upcoming fights and toast not only to the prospect of making bank, but also the idea of just having a good time. "It's not always about the money," said no ultra-rich person ever. The fighters are woken up and put to work. Equity in action. They all work hitting rocks. But Turbo isn't having the time of his life. I mean, prison isn't supposed to be fun, but sure. He argues with the guards before attempting to pick a fight with Yuri. They get close to throwing blows, but are stopped by the guards. Once he's calmed down, Turbo notices that one of them isn't being treated equally. Dolar is sitting pretty, reading a book at the top of a hill. After returning to the prison, Yuri goes and trains before Turbo joins him in the gym. Meanwhile, Dolar's in his cell when the warden stops by and gives him a gift from his representative, Rizzo. Once the warden leaves, that gift's revealed to be steroids. Dishonest criminal, what's this world coming to? When he starts sparring practice, Dolar quickly takes down hordes of prisoners while under the influence of enhancers. He even takes on 2 at a time. What a champ. The first fight takes place between the Brazilian prisoner Rodrigo and the Athenian prisoner Petros. Rodrigo handily defeats Petros. Turbo's up next fighting the Croatian prisoner Andre. But the battle doesn't last long, as he's beaten very quickly by a much stronger Turbo. Yuri takes to the ring and faces off against French prisoner Jean. Gaga watches on, worried he's got a losing fighter. But his fears are quickly put to rest when Yuri dominates his opponent. Even though Jean keeps getting up, Yuri only comes back stronger. After winning, Yuri limps off stage and a prisoner watches intently as he leaves. Dolar steps into the ring to take on North Korean prisoner Lam, who he takes down in a second. It's part skill and mostly drugs. While all these fights look like a scene from Karate Kid with twists and air kicks is beyond me. The losers are exiled from the prison and sent home, where they'll serve the rest of their sentence with no prospects of freedom. However, when they're dropped at what they're told is a pickup zone, they're gunned down instead. Now they're no longer in prison, so I guess they kind of got that freedom they were after. The boys return to the quarry, where they slave away while Dolar relaxes, as usual. Turbo tries to get to Yuri, telling him he'll beat him when their fight comes up. After a guard confronts Yuri, he turns around and hits Turbo, and the two start fighting. The guards choose to let the battle continue for a while before breaking it up. The pair are taken to solitary confinement as a punishment. Time passes. The two barely speak, and when they do, Turbo's the first one to say something that irritates Yuri. His leg is getting worse. Being forced to stand for such extended periods is causing him extreme pain. Eventually, their sponsors bail out the two, greasing the guards to access their fighters. They tell their sponsors about the hard labor, which angers Gaga and Gio. They both furiously go and see the warden, who makes them aware that Rizzo's also here. They turn to see the Georgian mobster before asking why their fighters are doing hard labor. Without hesitation or care, he declares that he's pretty much rigging the game in his favor. When they start getting angry at Rizzo, he suggests they instead liquefy their assets and bet on the fighter they know will win because they'll make sure of it. Yuri and Turbo, unaware they're being played, are back in the quarry working the day away. At first they don't get along, but things slowly improve between them, even if Yuri's resistant. On another day at the quarry, Turbo tells his new Russian friend that the contest is rigged, but he's surprised that Yuri isn't surprised. Yuri tells him that this competition isn't about winning against the fighters, it's surviving the enemies beyond the ring. The budding friendship between the two is only getting stronger as they begin training together, knowing that they're up against a rigged system. Meanwhile, Gaga and Gino are frantically trying to switch bets and get more cash to win big based on Rizzo's advice. Realizing that they're only making things harder by starving and overworking them, Yuri and Turbo choose to embrace the circumstances and make their time in the quarry a training session. When Yuri's knee gives way to the pain, Turbo sees and takes some nearby flowers, offering them up to rub their oils on the affected areas for relief. At lunch, Yuri notices the tattoos and asks Turbo if he's got children. He tells Yuri all about his son and daughter back in America. But when he tries to connect further with Yuri, he's met with resistance. Turbo realizes their reasons for fighting are entirely different. While he wants to go back to his kids, Yuri simply wants to prove he's worthy of being what he knows he is, a complete fighter. He jokes around, saying he'll feel bad when he wins, but Yuri's not very good with the whole humor thing. That night, Yuri applies the flower oil to his knee before they fight the next day. With new bets placed by Gaga and Gio, it's time for a new round of fights. Yuri faces off against Rodrigo and manages to get the upper hand on Yuri, whose knee's failing him. Yuri keeps fighting before putting Rodrigo in a headlock and ultimately winning. Rodrigo congratulates him on a good fight, unaware he's about to be executed for losing. Rizzo grows more concerned about Yuri's presence in the competition. He tells the warden that he needs to step it up a notch with his dirty tactics. The warden confronts Turbo and accuses him and Yuri of being lovers, which isn't allowed in prison, or Russia in general, to be honest. And when he fights back, he's aggressively beaten by the guards. At lunch, Yuri wonders where his lunch buddy is and eventually leaves the cafeteria. On his way out, he hears Turbo calling out and, when he looks in the cell, sees a severely beaten man who's in critical condition. He suggests a doctor, but is met with fierce resistance. Turbo tells Yuri to carry on preparing for their fight. While training, Dolar ominously approaches Yuri and taunts him. He lets Yuri know that he's aware of his injury, but when he fights back, Dolar doesn't care, barely backing off an inch. The two carry on training, preparing to face off one another. Yuri goes to check on Turbo, only to see him out of his cell. He searches for him and finds him training, but Turbo's weak, barely able to fight. The warden pulls him from training to go back to the quarry. On the way, Yuri tries to convince Turbo to escape. He rejects the idea, saying if he loses, he just goes home. But the older man, who sees all, tells him that the losers never return home. They disappear. With a change of heart, Turbo agrees to run. But when they attempt to break the chain, the hammer breaks instead. A guard blows the whistle on him, and everyone surrounds the two. They fight the guards off, but they eventually overpower Turbo. Yuri manages to recover for both of them before unlocking the shackles and allowing Turbo to escape. As Turbo gets away, Yuri's knocked out. So Yuri wakes up only to be confronted by Rizzo and the warden. When he asks to see Gaga, he's told that he's no longer a concern for him, which prompts the man himself to appear and declare that Yuri is now worth more dead than alive. Yuri's angry, screaming at Gaga, but it's pointless. They tell him that he'll now fight the Colombian in the final. As the fight commences, it's clear that the Colombian's on steroids. This match is all about who gets the upper hand first. But things get ugly when Dolar attacks his bad knee. Yuri keeps fighting, but he can't beat him. Eventually, Dolar knocks Yuri right out of the ring. As the ref's about to call it, Yuri sees the mop next to the ring and remembers how he used to brace his knee back in his days as a janitor. With seconds left on the clock, he just about manages to make it back to the ring and continue fighting. And with vengeance on his mind, Yuri's ready to fight. But his opponent notices the blood dripping from his knee and knows it's only a matter of time. He claps for Yuri in the silent arena, taunting him. As he gets up close, Yuri tries to take a swipe, but Dolar dodges. He hits him, knocking Yuri right back to the ground. The older man calls out his name, and everyone joins in. Yuri gets up and fights, starting to get the upper hand on his arrogant, cheating opponent. Soon they all watch in horror, realizing they're about to lose a ton of money. Yuri delivers the final blow, and Dolar is down and out. Yuri Buka is officially the winner. Gaga grabs Rizzo, furious that he just lost $5 million. Gio runs and confronts the warden with a gun, but Rizzo and his henchmen enter before he gets the chance. He kills them both before the warden shoots him. Resting after his victory, the warden tells Yuri that only one man can be free. Since he helped Turbo escape, he forfeited his right to leave a free man. But Yuri doesn't care. He achieved what he wanted to achieve. The warden acts as if he's returning to the Russian prison he came from, but Yuri knows what's about to happen. He's taken to the same place as the others, and a gun is put to his head. As the warden prepares to pull the trigger, Turbo shoots him, single-handedly taking down all the guards before freeing Yuri and telling him to run. The two meet Gaga, who's waiting in the car, and as they drive off, Gaga gives Yuri his cut from the winnings and tells him that he bet on him the whole time. He knows who the best fighter was. Turbo confirms that he's going home to his children, and Yuri asks to be released. The two share a moment of gratitude for one another's help before parting ways. But before saying goodbye, Yuri finally tells Turbo his name, to which he responds with his real name, Jericho. So Jericho drives off with Gaga, and now Yuri walks alone, a free man. Undisputed 3 was released in 2010 by New Image. It starred Scott Adkins, Mikel Shannon Jenkins, and Mark Evanier. If your freedom hinged on brutal combat that could kill you, would you compete for the ultimate prize?